Wild hearts, welcome back to Alpha's Wolf Romance Library. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more fated mate stories. Now, let's begin. Los Angeles never slept. The neon lights bled into the night sky, humming against the rain-slick streets, while strangers moved past each other like shadows, never seeing, never caring. To most, it was just another city. But to Celine, it was a cage. She pulled her thin coat tighter around her body as she hurried toward the midnight bus stop. Her head ached from too many hours spent cleaning tables at the diner, her hands raw from bleach, her body exhausted. And yet, beneath all that, something else stirred, an emptiness that gnawed at her bones. She was an Omega, and Omegas were always hungry. Not for food, not for sleep, but for belonging. She hadn't had that in years. The bus pulled up with a groan of brakes and a hiss of doors. Celine climbed aboard, shoving damp hair from her eyes. She dropped her last few crumpled bills into the slot and slid into a seat near the back, away from the chatter of drunks and late-night workers. The air smelled of old vinyl and rain. She rested her head against the cold glass, watching droplets race each other down the window. She told herself she was invisible here. Just another tired face, another lonely passenger. But she was wrong. He boarded at the next stop. Celine felt him before she saw him, the way the air shifted, thickened, as if the entire bus inhaled at once. Her wolf, quiet for years, silenced by rejection and shame, stirred in her chest. She straightened, heart pounding. Her instincts screamed danger. The man moved with quiet dominance, his frame broad, his steps deliberate. Rain clung to his black coat, dripping onto the rubber floor. His face was shadowed beneath the dim lights, but his eyes, God's, his eyes. Gold, molten, and unblinking. They swept over the bus once, dismissing everyone, until they found her. Celine looked away, heat rising in her cheeks. She gripped the edge of her seat, forcing herself to breathe. He was just a man. Just a stranger. That was what she told herself as he walked down the aisle. But when he slid into the empty seat beside her, the air grew heavier still. Her throat tightened. She shifted closer to the window, trying to put space between them, but the bus was crowded now, bodies pressing in, the smell of wet clothes and sweat mingling with the faint cedar sandstorm scent radiating from him. "Don't speak," she prayed. "Don't notice me." But her wolf was already howling. Minutes stretched. Celine's eyelids grew heavy, her exhaustion dragging her down. Against her will, her body betrayed her. Her head drifted sideways until it rested against his shoulder. She jolted awake, mortified. Sorry," she whispered, her voice catching. But he didn't move. He didn't sneer. He didn't push her away. Instead, he shifted just slightly, his shoulder firm, steady, as if inviting her to stay. And for the first time in years, Celine felt safe. The bus rattled on. The city blurred into streaks of neon and rain, and exhaustion pulled her under again. She let her eyes close, her head pressed to his warmth, telling herself she'd only rest for a moment. But safety was an illusion. Because as she drifted, something stirred. A burning at the base of her throat, faint at first, then sharper, like fire licking against her skin. She whimpered softly, shifting in her sleep. And the man beside her, no, not a man, something more, turned his head, his golden eyes darkening as they lingered on her. The mark was beginning. The driver hummed along with the radio, oblivious. Passengers muttered, scrolled through their phones, stared at the dark streets rushing past. None of them saw the way the stranger's hand twitched as if fighting an instinct. None of them smelled the faint rise of power rolling off him in waves. But Celine felt it, even in her sleep. Her pulse raced, her wolf clawed, and when the bus screeched to a sudden halt, her eyes flew open. That was when she saw them. 3 figures in dark hoods standing outside, rain dripping from their sleeves. Their eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. Rogues. Celine's breath hitched. She'd seen wolves like that before, wild, starving, lawless. They had no pack, no rules, only hunger. The doors hissed open. They stepped aboard. Every hair on Celine's body stood on end. Her throat burned hotter now, the invisible fire spreading. She pressed her palm against her neck, trying to smother it. The stranger beside her didn't move, but she felt his body tense, power radiating from him like heat from a furnace. The rogues stalked down the aisle, their boots thudding softly. Their scent, blood, rot, desperation, choked her lungs. One of them paused, sniffing the air. His head turned, eyes narrowing as they landed on her. Celine froze. A low growl rumbled from the man beside her. Quiet. Deadly. The rogues stilled, their laughter cut short. The bus seemed to shrink, every seat and shadow bending beneath the weight of his presence. Celine's heart hammered. She didn't understand. She didn't dare move. But deep inside her, her wolf whispered one word, over and over, a truth she could not ignore. Alpha. And as the rogues took another step closer, the stranger finally turned his head, his golden eyes blazing like fire in the dark. The rogues' laughter scraped against Celine's nerves like broken glass. They moved down the aisle with deliberate slowness, enjoying the way passengers shrank away from them, enjoying the fear. Celine's wolf pressed against her chest, frantic. Run, it whispered. Hide. But her body refused to move, as if her seat had grown claws and pinned her in place. The burning at her throat intensified, each heartbeat pounding against the invisible brand. She curled her fingers into her coat, praying the rogues would pass her by. One didn't. He stopped 2 rows away, his nostrils flaring. His eyes glowed faint amber, catching the light as he sniffed the air. Then his smile spread, sharp, crooked, cruel. She's here, he rasped, his voice like gravel. The other 2 stilled, their heads snapping towards Celine's seat. Her breath caught. No. Before she could finish, the stranger beside her shifted. Not much. Not even enough for the drunk couple near the front to notice. But Celine felt it. The weight of his presence slammed into the rogues like an invisible wall. The air grew heavy, electric, bending under the gravity of dominance. Out, he growled. It wasn't loud. It wasn't shouted. But the word carried through the bus like thunder. The rogue nearest Celine snarled, baring yellowed teeth. You don't command us, old wolf. The man turned his head. Slowly. Deliberately. His golden eyes ignited with a fire that seemed to glow from within. And for the first time, Celine understood the stories whispered in dark corners, the warnings carved into pack law. This was no ordinary alpha. The rogues faltered. Their bravado cracked under the pressure rolling off him. One took a step back, his claws sliding out instinctively as if to ward off a predator greater than himself. The alpha stood, his frame towering, filling the aisle with shadow. Last warning. The rogues hissed, but they obeyed. Muttering curses under their breath, they backed toward the rear door. One spat at the floor before slipping into the storm outside, but none dared look back. The hiss of the doors swallowed them whole. The bus exhaled. Passengers shifted, glancing nervously at one another, unsure if they'd imagined what just happened. The driver hummed, oblivious. But Celine wasn't oblivious. Her throat still burned. The heat had spread to her chest now, searing every breath she took. She pressed her palm harder against her skin, desperate to stop it. What's happening to me? She whispered. The alpha turned, his golden eyes locking onto hers. You've been marked. Her stomach dropped. No. That's impossible. His gaze didn't waver. Fate doesn't care what's possible. She shook her head violently. No. No, you don't understand. I'm not, her voice cracked. She forced it out anyway. I'm not meant for anyone. I was rejected. I was cast out. Enough. The single word silenced her. It wasn't cruel, but it cut sharper than any blade. His presence pressed against her wolf, forcing it to still. She hated that part of her thrilled at the command, that her wolf whimpered with recognition instead of defiance. Who are you? She whispered. The corner of his lips curved, but there was no humor in it. Only inevitability. Davin, he said softly. Alpha King. Her blood ran cold. She'd heard the name before, passed between omegas in hushed tones, spoken with awe and fear. The ruler of every pack on the western seaboard. The one who could silence entire armies with his voice. You're lying, she breathed. His golden eyes burned hotter. Do you think rogues would flee a liar? She froze. She had no answer. You felt it, he continued, softer now. His gaze flicked to her throat, where the invisible fire pulsed. The bond has begun. Her wolf stirred, howling inside her chest. Celine clenched her fists until her nails dug crescents into her palms. No. I don't want this. It doesn't matter what you want, Davin said, his voice low, dangerous. It matters what fate wants. Her eyes stung. Fury and fear churned in her gut. Why me? You could have any she-wolf in the city. Why? I don't want them, he cut in sharply. His eyes softened, barely, as they bored into hers. I want the one fate chose. You. The bus shuddered to another stop. The doors hissed open. A blast of rain swept in, drenching the steps. No one boarded. No one left. The storm outside waited, silent, as if listening. Celine's chest heaved. Her instinct screamed to run. But where? Into the rain, into the rogue's waiting jaws? Or deeper into the fire burning her from the inside out? Her wolf answered for her. Stay. Her breath caught. She wanted to scream, to deny it, but her body betrayed her again. Her hand twitched toward him before she yanked it back, nails scraping the vinyl seat. His eyes followed the movement, his jaw tightening as if he'd felt the pull too. Don't fight it, he murmured. You'll only burn worse. Her throat ached. Her eyes filled with tears. I can't survive this. You'll survive, he said. His voice was steady, absolute. Because I won't let you fall. The bus lurched forward again, carrying them deeper into the neon-lit storm of Los Angeles. Celine pressed her head back against the glass, shaking, her throat still aflame. The Alpha King sat beside her, silent but immovable, as though the city itself bowed around him. And deep inside, her wolf whispered the truth she wasn't ready to hear. She belonged to him now. The bus ride ended too quickly. The storm outside had worsened, rain pelting the pavement as if the sky itself wanted to drown Los Angeles. Celine stumbled off the steps, her thin coat useless against the downpour. She wanted to vanish into the crowd, lose herself in the maze of city blocks, pretend none of this had happened. But he followed. She didn't hear his footsteps, she felt them. Each one thrummed through the rain-soaked street like a warning, like a heartbeat she couldn't escape. She pulled her coat tighter and darted into an alley, hoping, praying the darkness would shield her. It didn't. Running already? His voice slid through the storm, low and dangerous. She whirled, her back pressing against the brick wall. Davin stood at the mouth of the alley, golden eyes glowing faintly even in the downpour. His coat clung to him, outlining a frame built from power and violence. He looked less like a man and more like the storm itself given form. "Stay away from me," she rasped, her throat still burning from the mark. He tilted his head, his gaze steady. "If I stay away, you'll burn alive. You felt it. Don't lie to me, or to yourself." Her nails scraped against the wall. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then he stepped closer, slow, deliberate, each movement radiating dominance. Celine's wolf whimpered, torn between fear and a strange, shameful longing. "You think I asked for this?" His voice cracked like thunder. "You think I wanted fate to bind me to an Omega hiding in the gutters of a human city?" Her chest stung, the words cutting deeper than claws. She hated that it hurt. Hated that a part of her cared what he thought. "I should reject you," he said, softer now, almost to himself. His jaw clenched, his fists flexing at his sides. "But I can't. The bond won't let me. And neither will my wolf." Celine shook her head, rain dripping from her lashes. "Then let me go. Let me die if I have to. Anything's better than being chained." His eyes flared molten gold, and in an instant, he was there, his hands slamming against the wall beside her head, his body caging hers in. She gasped, her breath stolen by his nearness, his scent, a storm of cedar and fire, filling her lungs. "You think death is freedom," he growled. "Then you don't know what it means to be mine." Her pulse thundered. Every nerve screamed to resist, but her wolf clawed inside her chest, desperate, aching for him. She clenched her teeth, fighting it. "I'll never beg for you." His lips curved, not with amusement, but with something darker. "You will." The heat in her throat spiked, sharp enough to make her cry out. She staggered, clutching at her neck, her knees buckling. The mark was devouring her, tearing through her veins like fire. Davin caught her before she collapsed. His arms were iron around her, holding her against his chest. She shoved weakly at him, but her strength was gone, consumed by the bond. "Listen to me," he said, his voice rough but steady. "The mark will kill you if you fight it. You have two choices. Accept the bond, or make a bargain with me." Her head snapped up, eyes wild. "A bargain?" He nodded once, his jaw tightening. "One night. You survive one night in my presence, under my control, and I'll release you. I'll tear the bond myself if I have to." Her lips parted, disbelief crashing over her. "And if I don't survive?" His golden eyes burned hotter, his wolf flashing beneath the surface. "Then you were never meant to be free." The storm howled, rain streaming between them, soaking their skin. Celine trembled, caught between terror and the strange pull of fate. One night. Could she endure it? Could she stand in the fire of him and not be consumed? "I don't trust you," she whispered. "You don't need to," he said. His thumb brushed against her jaw, forcing her gaze to meet his. "You only need to decide. Live or die, Omega." "What will it be?" Her heart pounded. She should refuse. She should spit in his face and run until her legs gave out. But the fire at her throat gave her no choice. Her wolf gave her no choice. "One night," she breathed. His smile was slow, sharp, and utterly merciless. "Good girl." Before she could respond, a sound shattered the moment, the low, guttural growl of wolves echoing from the end of the alley. Celine's blood ran cold as shadows emerged from the rain. The rogues had returned, more of them this time, their eyes glowing in the dark. Davin shifted instantly, his body in front of hers, his presence filling the alley like a wall of steel and fury. His growl rolled through the storm, shaking the air. The rogues hesitated, but hunger gleamed in their eyes. "The king hides in human filth," one sneered. "And with a weakling Omega at his side." Celine flinched, but Davin didn't move. His voice was a promise of violence. "Touch her, and I'll paint these walls with your blood." The rogues snarled. One lunged forward. And in that instant, Celine saw what it meant to belong to the Alpha King. Because Davin didn't just fight. He unleashed. The first rogue lunged. Davin met him head-on, his hand shooting up to catch the wolf's throat midair. The beast snarled, claws raking, but Davin slammed him into the wall so hard the brick cracked. A single twist of his wrist, and the rogue crumpled to the ground, choking on his last breath. The others hesitated, circling. The rain turned the alley into a river, steam rising from Davin's skin as his wolf pushed closer to the surface. His golden eyes glowed brighter, feral, and Celine swore she felt the walls themselves tremble beneath his growl. "You should have stayed gone," he rumbled. 3 rogues attacked at once. The alley exploded into chaos. Claws met claws, teeth tore into flesh. Davin moved like a storm unleashed, every strike precise, brutal, final. One rogue tried to leap past him, aiming for Celine, but Davin was faster. He yanked the wolf mid-leap, slammed him against the pavement, and crushed his skull with a sickening crack. Celine stumbled back, her breath ragged, her wolf howling inside her chest. Fear and awe tangled in her veins. She had seen fights before. But nothing like this. Davin wasn't just strong, he was inevitable. The last rogue backed away, blood dripping from his muzzle. "This isn't over," he spat. "Others will come." Davin advanced, his body radiating lethal intent. The rogue bolted into the storm, his shadow swallowed by the rain. Silence crashed down, broken only by Celine's uneven breaths and the rain pelting the ground. Davin stood in the center of the carnage, chest heaving, blood smeared across his jaw. He turned slowly, his eyes locking onto her. Celine froze. Her throat seared, the bond flaring like fire in her veins. The sight of him, feral, victorious, dripping with blood, made something inside her break. Her wolf surged upward, clawing for him, crying for him. "No," she whispered, staggering back. "I won't." But her body betrayed her. She trembled, heat flooding her belly, her pulse racing with a need she couldn't name. The fire spread, overwhelming, devouring. Davin saw it. His expression darkened, caught between fury and hunger. He strode toward her, each step slow, deliberate. "Stop fighting it," he growled. She shook her head violently, tears mixing with the rain. "I can't. I can't be yours. I'm not strong enough." His hand shot out, gripping her jaw, forcing her gaze to his. "You're stronger than you know." Her lips trembled. "One night." That was the bargain. His thumb brushed against her lip, smearing rainwater. "Then tonight begins now." Celine's breath caught as he pulled her against him, his body radiating heat through the cold storm. His mouth hovered over hers, not touching, only breathing the same air. The bond roared between them, screaming for completion. Her wolf whimpered, clawing inside her chest. "Mate." Her resistance cracked. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why would fate give you me?" His eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. "Because you're mine." And then his mouth claimed hers. The kiss was fire and storm, brutal and tender all at once. Celine gasped against him, her fingers clawing at his coat as heat surged through every nerve. The mark on her throat ignited fully, searing, binding, claiming. She moaned into his mouth, the sound raw, desperate, pulled from her soul. Davin growled, deep and victorious, the sound vibrating through her chest. His hands gripped her hips, pulling her tighter against him, as though he could fuse them together by force alone. Celine trembled, torn between fear and surrender. But the bond left her no choice. Her body burned, her wolf howled, her heart broke wide open. She sobbed into his kiss, not from pain, but from the terrifying truth. She wanted him. When he pulled back, his golden eyes blazed, molten and unyielding. Say it. Her chest heaved, her lips swollen, her throat raw. What? Say you're mine. Her tears spilled, hot against her cheeks. She shook her head, even as her wolf screamed for her to obey. I can't. He growled, his mouth claiming hers again, fiercer, hungrier. His teeth grazed her lip, his tongue forcing past her defenses until she whimpered helplessly. He broke away only to press his forehead to hers, his voice low, guttural. You already are. The bond surged, a tidal wave of heat and light. Celine cried out, her body convulsing as the mark seared into place, binding her soul to his. She clutched his coat, her knees buckling, but he held her upright, his arms iron around her. The fire slowly ebbed, leaving her trembling, breathless, marked. Celine buried her face against his chest, sobbing. What have you done to me? Davin's hand stroked her rain-soaked hair, his voice softer now, though still edged with steel. I've made you mine. And now, Omega, his golden eyes lifted toward the storm, blazing with fire. The world will know it. Rain sluiced from the alley and rinsed the blood into the gutters, turning the city's light into a smear of red and gold. Sirens wailed somewhere distant, a car alarm hiccuped twice and swallowed its own panic. Davin didn't flinch. He stood with Celine wrapped in his coat, the storm painting steam on his skin where blood met heat, and watched the mouth of the alley until even the shadows decided they had better places to be. Can you stand? He asked quietly. She found her feet. The bond pulsed steady now instead of like a wound. It didn't feel like burning anymore. It felt like pressure, immense, relentless, an ocean resting its weight on her sternum. She nodded anyway. Yes. Good. He slid his hand down her arm to take her wrist, not a shackle, not quite, but an anchor to pull her out of the alley and onto Sunset Boulevard. Neon reflected in puddles, blinking open/open/open as if the city were a throat learning one word over and over. A dish of oranges glowed in the window of a grocery, a tattoo shop cast spears of blue light across the sidewalk. Where are we going? She asked. Up, he said. High ground. They cut through a courtyard smelling of wet jasmine, up a flight of concrete stairs that had learned to hold its breath, through a service door that didn't argue with Davin's hand. The penthouse elevator purred like a satisfied cat. Celine swallowed. My rent doesn't cover views, she muttered. Davin's mouth twitched. Mine does. The elevator opened into glass and shadow. The penthouse was sparing and severe, as if someone had purchased a skyline and decided furniture would be an insult to it. The storm pressed its face to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Los Angeles stretched under them like a jeweled serpent without a master. Davin flicked on one lamp. Amber light held to him like a memory. Bathrooms through there. He gestured, then hesitated, as if calculating how much distance the bond would allow before it started to bruise. Towels. Clothes. Celine's hands were shaking. She didn't know if it was adrenaline, the bond, or because she had never been higher than a third-floor walk-up and the city looked, from up here, like something a god might do when bored. She drifted toward the bathroom, paused in the mirror's doorway, and saw the girl she had been 2 hours ago, cheap coat, diner uniform, the expression of someone practicing erasure. She turned her head. A faint, luminous sigil pulsed at the base of her neck. Not ink. Not scar. The suggestion of a mark, like moonlight caught under skin. She touched it, it sparked against her fingertips without pain. Her reflection shivered and went still again. Behind her, Davin rapped knuckles once against the door jamb out of politeness, then stepped back. "Rogues will talk," he said. "We have hours before that talk becomes a crowd. Eat. Shower. Then we train." "We, what?" His golden eyes found her in the mirror. "If you're bound to me, you are a target. I want you alive long enough to hate me for it." She didn't laugh. It was too close to the truth to be a joke. Steam gentled her shaking. The water hissed down and the city's roar softened to a hush beyond glass. She scrubbed Allie from her skin and blood from beneath her nails and watched the drain carry both away. When she emerged in a black long-sleeved shirt and soft sweats that fit like they'd always been hers, Davin had set a tray on the counter: rice, salmon, sliced mango, a glass of water with 2 lemon rounds drifting like small suns. "You cook?" she asked, sitting because her knees had a contract with gravity. "I hunt," he said. "And provide." She ate because her body made the decision without consulting her stubbornness. The food steadied her thoughts. "You said we train." He nodded once and moved the lamp aside, clearing a space. "Your senses. Your tells. How to breathe when fear decides to drive. And this." He tipped his chin toward her throat. "Close it." "Close what?" "The mark." He held up a hand. "Not sever. Not deny. Close. Think of it like a door. If it's open, everything can walk through: your fear, my power, the pull that makes you stumble. If it's closed, you choose when to answer." She stared. "That's a thing?" "It is if I say so." He stepped to her, close enough that his heat lifted gooseflesh along her arms, close enough that the scent of cedar and rain threaded into her lungs and made a home. "Eyes," he said. "On me." She lifted her gaze. Gold hit her like weather. "Breathe," he murmured. "In through your nose, slow. Hold. Out through your mouth. Again." She obeyed. The bond hummed. It wanted to read his heartbeat and call it a lullaby. It wanted to track his breath and join it. She breathed anyway, counted, paused, exhaled until the count was the only thing left. "Good," he said. "Now feel the mark." Heat flickered at the base of her neck, a moth at a lamp. She flinched. "Do not recoil," he said. "It is yours as much as mine. Place 2 fingers there. Tell it to wait." Celine raised her hand. Her fingers trembled but found the luminous edge. "Wait," she whispered, feeling ridiculous and scared and very, very tired. The heat surged, petulant, demanding, then, to her astonishment, eased. Not gone. Banked. Like an obedient fire. Her eyes widened. "I did that?" "You did," Davin said, pride softening the gravel in his voice. Again. They worked until the lamp burned a smaller circle, until the rain relented and relented again. He corrected her stance when fear made her collapse inward. He tapped her elbow when tension crawled into her grip. He circled her slowly and named what she lived through without words: flinch, breath, tell, recovery, until her body learned that it could choose. Halfway through a drill, hands up, eyes on, weight light, Celine felt the change before the intercom hummed. A pressure from below, like the building remembering it had a heart. Davin's head lifted. The gold in his gaze sharpened to a blade's line. He crossed to a console and pressed a button. No deliveries. A voice laughed, expensive and insincere. "Old friend," the speaker purred, rich with an accent that never paid taxes. "Do not be rude. I've brought wine." Davin's jaw set. "Vargas." Celine's skin chilled. She didn't know the name, but the bond did. It recoiled, then coiled to strike. Who? Southside Regent, Davin said. Smiles like a saint. Eats like a snake. He pressed the button again. Leave. Your rogues bled in my streets, Vargas said smoothly. We should discuss what that means for our treaties. He paused. And your new ornament. Celine straightened. Ornament? Davin's hand hovered an inch from the console. He didn't push. He didn't answer. He looked at Celine instead. Choice, he said. Hide behind the door I taught you, or stand beside me and make them remember your name. Her stomach dipped. The girl in the mirror would have hidden. The Omega at the bus stop would have folded herself so small she could be a coin under a vending machine. Celine lifted her chin. Open the door, she said. The penthouse foyer bloomed in the camera feed, marble, glass, a man in a charcoal suit cut with predatory kindness. His hair silvered elegantly at the temples, his smile could sell anything from absolution to insurance. Beside him waited two wolves in tailored black, the kind who called themselves security because assassin made humans nervous. Davin spoke to the console without warmth. Top floor. Alone. Vargas lifted both hands. As the king commands. The elevator's hum traveled through steel and bone. Celine felt it in the mark, in the way the bond braced like a hand on a doorknob. She followed Davin to the entry and stood where his shadow could reach her without swallowing her whole. The doors parted. Davin, Vargas said like a toast. His eyes slid to Celine, catalogued her, dismissed her, returned, sharpened. And the rumor. Celine didn't bow. She didn't look away. Her new heartbeat, the one that counted things other than survival, found its rhythm. Celine, she said. Not rumor. Ah. Vargas's smile widened by a single tooth. We all buy names when we come to Los Angeles. And we earn them when we leave, Davin said. Some leave sooner than others, Vargas murmured. He strolled to the glass, admiring his reflection as if it were skyline. Word travels under doors. The king bleeds. The king marks. The king trains an Omega when any sane wolf would sell her upstate and make a neat profit on the bond. Celine's fingers curled, the mark heated, the bond pressed forward. She placed 2 fingers there and whispered, not to Davin, not to Vargas, but to herself, wait. The heat obeyed. Davin's voice was quiet thunder. Choose your next words with caution. I choose interesting ones, Vargas said. There is an old right, Davin. You know it. I'm sure the girl does not. He looked back, eyes bright and hungry. The severing. Silence thin to wire. You bring that into my home? Davin asked. I bring possibility, Vargas purred. The bond is new. A moon old? Less? Sever it. You keep your throne without a liability. She keeps her life without a crown. Everyone keeps their skin. He smiled at Celine. Freedom looks good on you, little Omega. Imagine sleeping through the night again. Celine's throat tightened. Because a small, traitor part of her did imagine it. A life without pressure. A life without a golden-eyed storm at her shoulder. A life that tasted like anonymity instead of lightning. Her gaze found Davin. He was watching her, not Vargas. He didn't reach for her. He didn't speak into her head like power sometimes did. He waited. Choice, he'd said. What does it cost? Celine asked Vargas. A price is most beautiful when we do not say it aloud, Vargas said cheerfully. But tonight? Only a gathering. Only a blade. Only a little blood. Only a little death, the bond translated. Davin's jaw flexed. Get out. Vargas sighed. Kings are so humorless when they are in love. He touched 2 fingers to his brow in a mock blessing and stepped into the elevator. Midnight. The old observatory. If you want your freedom, girl, bring your throat. The doors closed. The humming descended. The storm leaned its forehead against the glass and listened for the sound of a decision. Davin turned. We do not. I decide, Celine said, not loud but unyielding. She looked at the city, at the wet black ribbon of the boulevard and the tiny people moving like sparks inside a machine. She placed 2 fingers to the mark and felt the heat steady and the pulse slow and the door open an inch to let her own voice through. I'm tired of being prey, she said. If freedom is a blade, I'll hold it. If fate is a chain, I'll choose where it leads. She met his golden gaze. She didn't look away. At midnight, she said, we go. They drove without speaking, the city unfolding beneath them like a story that couldn't decide its genre. Stormwater gleamed on the road, palms shook their fronds like gossip, the Hollywood sign hid behind mist as if embarrassed by how often it had been in the background of a bad decision. Davin drove the way he fought, spare, precise, consequences assumed. His hands were loose on the wheel, his attention cut the dark like a blade. Celine watched rain stripe the windshield and counted the places she had slept in the last year, on a couch that belonged to a hairdresser who called everyone sweetheart, on a bus bench where the metal taught the body new verbs, on a floor with a towel for a pillow because sometimes pride cost extra. The bond hummed, alive under her skin. Not a demand. Not a leash. A warning that the rest of the night had sharp corners. Vargas meant it, Davin said at last. He will bring steel and witnesses. And a price, she said. And a price, he agreed. What is it? His mouth flattened. Severing is old magic. It doesn't end the bond so much as starve it. It takes from whatever feeds it. Which is? He glanced at her. Lightning stitched the sky, offering a brief truth. The wolf inside his gaze was not civilized and did not want to be. Us. Celine turned that word over. If I do this. If you do this, he said evenly, you live. You keep your name. You keep your breath. And you keep a hole where the bond would be. A pause. Some holes never stop asking to be filled. They climbed into the park, the road winding like a thought that needed convincing. When the observatory rose from the hill, its white bones glowed, rain-washed and watchful, the domes like 3 blind eyes turned to a cloud-choked moon. Wolves waited on the terraces. Men in suits that fit like excuses. Women in dresses the color of knife edges. Black umbrellas bloomed and shook off rain like impatient birds. Vargas stood at the top of the steps, exquisite and bored. Welcome, he sang, voice carrying. We'll try to keep the desecration tidy. The historians complain when we stain the marble. Davin's presence hit the crowd like a front moving in. Conversation stuttered, spines found their better posture, a scatter of heads bowed for reasons they would insist later were aesthetic. Celine walked at his side, not behind, and let the bond raise the hairs at the back of the assembly's collective neck. A woman detached herself from the shadows. Older than time wanted to admit. A throat tattoo like a constellation, inked stars connected by a thin black thread. She carried a blade wrapped in white cloth. High Seer, Davin said. King, she returned, and then to Celine, softer, eyes kind in a way that suggested they had seen every version of cruelty and still chosen to be gentle. Child. Celine didn't bristle at that. Tonight, she was new enough to be a child and old enough to say no. What does it take? She asked, nodding toward the cloth. The seer unwrapped the blade. It wasn't ornate. It was simply honest about what it could do, steel with more history than it needed. This knife has severed 32 bonds, the seer said. 2 were mistakes. 4 were mercies. The rest were choices. What did it take? From the bond? The seer's eyes flicked to Davin and back. Everything that made it a bridge. Celine heard what wasn't said. If the bond was a way for two to become more than two, the knife would return them to arithmetic. Davin stood as if he could absorb the knight's teeth into his own. We leave, he told Celine. Now. She surprised herself by smiling. I thought you don't like movies. What? They end, she said. Then she grew serious. I can't spend my life running from rooms where I might be strong. She stepped forward. Wolves parted without meaning to. Vargas's smile brightened, a host finishing the seating chart. Celine stopped in front of the seer and offered her throat as if offering her signature. The mark warmed under her skin as if it understood what moments were. Last chance, Davin said, too quiet for anyone but her to hear. Celine set 2 fingers to the glow. It steadied, not because he asked, not because Vargas taunted, not because the seer waited, but because she told it the story of who she'd been and who she would be next. I choose, she said, and the seer lifted the blade. Wait, Vargas said, delighted. One thing I forgot to mention. Small detail. Severing is hungriest when bonds are new. It prefers symmetry. To cut a thread cleanly, one must anchor both ends. He gestured. 2 men dragged a narrow iron rack forward, the kind used for astronomy once and for other arrangements later. Chains clinked softly, an old sound pretending to be polite. Davin's power snapped like a trap. No. Ancient rites are terribly specific, Vargas sighed. King, you hold the north end of the thread. The girl, the south. If you want your neat ending, tie your wolf to the rack. Celine's vision tunneled. Not fear. Focus. The bond surged, pushing heat into her palms, her spine, her throat. Davin didn't move. The crowd held its breath for history. The seer's voice cut across the storm. Enough pageantry. She set the blade on her palm and held it towards Celine. Some bonds are cut from outside. Those prefer hunger. Others, she said, eyes warm and unblinking, are cut from within. Those prefer courage. Celine reached. Vargas's hand darted, elegant and fast, to catch her wrist. His smile never faltered, his eyes did not. Careful, he murmured. Knives make honest friends but poor lovers. Let go, Davin said, and 2 words remade gravity. Vargas's fingers opened as if they had always intended to. Celine took the knife. The metal was cold as rain and loud as truth. She weighed it, wrong for her hand, right for this night. She lifted it to the mark and pressed the flat against the glow. Heat hummed. The bond thrummed. She could sever and survive. She could be free and empty. She could stop being a problem. The city would go back to blinking. The bus would come. The oranges in the window would stay round and simple. Child, the seer said softly, the price is not blood. It is what you won't be, if you cut. Celine closed her eyes. The knife cooled against her skin. In the dark behind her lids she saw the girl on the bus, the shoulder she had dared to rest on, the alley where death had a schedule and she had interrupted it. She saw hunger with a face that learned her name. She saw a door she had learned to close and the moment she had chosen to open it. She opened her eyes. She lowered the blade. Vargas made a sound that wasn't surprise and wasn't disappointment and suggested he liked both. So dramatic. Celine turned the knife and placed it, handle first, in Davin's palm. I am not a whole, she said to the night, to the city, to herself. I am a bridge. The bond surged, not like fire, but like sunrise breaking glass. Gasps rippled the terrace as the mark flared bright enough to pain mortal eyes. Something old and tender moved under the world and set its hand on Celine's shoulder. Davin's face went still the way men go still when they realize they have been waiting for a thing without admitting it. "Celine," he said, and it sounded like a vowel learning its first word. Vargas clapped once. Twice. Charming. Now the part where everyone kills each other. It changed with a breath. The wolves who had called themselves audience became a line of knives. The men in suits became angles. 2 launched at Davin. 1 at Celine. Vargas did not move. He didn't need to. He was a pull more than a push. Davin met violence with violence, clean and spare. Celine dropped, twisted, used the stance Davin had corrected 24 times and found her elbow settling into a throat with an accuracy that made the body forget its job. The seer's blade flashed once and removed a problem from the ledger without fuss. "Behind," Davin said, and she was already there, her back to his, their breath finding the same count. The bond didn't drag, it informed, like a quiet radio in a kitchen saying rain on the 5, wind on the 6. He moved, she answered, a wolf lunged, Celine's hand found the soft place under a rib before her mind named it. When it ended, it ended. Wolves who wanted to live remembered it. Men who wanted to spend tonight differently regretted their calendars. Vargas smoothed his cuffs. Kings do love a floor show. Davin stepped forward, his presence a weather system with one forecast. "This city is under my protection," he said, voice carrying to the dome, to the palm groves, to the streets that pretended not to hear. Every pack that hunts in it hunts by law. Every throat that kneels in it kneels by choice. The Omega beside me, and gold flashed like the moon remembering it had work, is not a rumor. She is my Luna. Celine felt the word take root. The terrace absorbed it with a hush and returned it magnified. Luna. Not ornament. Not accident. Vargas smiled like glass. "Then I bring you a gift," he purred. "A crown. With thorns, naturally." He inclined his head to Celine. "Congratulations, little bridge. May you carry more than you break." He wasn't there when she blinked. The rain was. The city waited, as cities do, to see if this would matter by morning. Davin turned. "You chose me." "No," Celine said, steady, sure, hand at the mark that glowed like a kept promise. "I chose us." Morning broke pale and clean, as if the storm had put a cloth over the city's face and whispered, "Hush." News helicopters skated the edges of the observatory like gulls with expensive cameras. Humans got a story about a private gala that had gone loud. Wolves got a message in a language they couldn't pretend not to understand. The king was awake, and he was not alone. Davin's penthouse felt different in daylight, less like a den, more like a place where the horizon did its stretches. He set coffee on the counter. Celine wrapped her hands around the mug as if warmth were a creature you could be kind to and it would stay. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "we build something no one can knife." He leaned a hip against the counter and studied her as if reading the last page of a book he had not meant to skip forward to. "The city will test you. Packs will come with gifts and claws. Humans will pretend they do not see what they trip over. Vargas will send flowers with teeth." Celine sipped. "And you?" "I will do the tedious work," he said. "Papers. Pledges. Meetings where men with expensive shoes talk about territory like it is chess and not heartbeats. I will be kind where I can and cruel when it is the smallest mercy." "And me?" "You will be seen," he said simply. "By the wolves who thought omegas were always the floor. By the girls on buses who think the only safe way to breathe is quietly. By every enemy looking for a weak place in my ribs. They will see you and forget to look away." He walked to the window. The sun was a white coin, the skyline caught it and made change. "And you will train. Again? Always. He glanced back. Power without discipline is weather. We need climate. She set her mug down. Then let's start. They did. Hours like beads on a string. Stance and breath. Hearing and distance. The mark as door and as lighthouse. He taught, she learned, then she taught her body to learn without asking. When the bond tugged, she didn't let it drag her, she let it inform. When fear arrived, she set a chair for it and told it to be useful or be quiet. By afternoon, the elevator chimed. Davin's shoulders lowered a fraction without losing height. Friendly, he said. Mostly. A woman stepped out whose smile arrived before she did. Honey-brown skin, hair braided into a crown that said both do not touch and try me. A leather jacket that had stories stitched into the seams. 2 wolves flanked her, both managed to convey lethal and bored. King, she said, popping a kiss near Davin's cheek that did not touch him. Luna, she added, and this time the warmth was not performance. I'm Zora. Downtown Regent. I brought samosas and gossip. Celine blinked. In that order? In every order, Zora laughed, setting a paper bag on the counter and plucking a triangle like a magician's coin. Vargas is pouting. The hillside packs are hedging their bets. And half the Omegas I know have decided to learn knife work by next week. Celine's mouth curved. I can make a flyer. Do, Zora said. I'll host. Bring your king for decoration. Davin made a noise that could have been insult or agreement. Zora bit into pastry and chewed, then sobered. There's one more thing. A ripple. Old wolves in old houses. They don't like what they saw last night. They like what they pretend they saw even less. What did they pretend? Celine asked. That the bond is a trick, Zora said. That you climbed a ladder made of pity. That kings do not kneel and lunas do not choose. The bond stirred. It didn't flare, it steadied. Celine felt it as an answer she hadn't phrased yet. What do we do with old stories that don't fit anymore? We write new ones, Zora said simply. Loudly. When Zora left, the penthouse was quieter but not empty. The city had moved closer, as if to overhear. Davin set his palm on the glass. You will have to stand in rooms that do not want you in them, he said. You will have to stand until the room changes shape. Celine moved to his side. Their reflections overlapped, 2 figures and a city and a ghost of a moon pale in the daylight. I stood in rooms that wanted me gone long before I met you, she said. The difference now is that I'm not alone. He glanced down. You chose us, he said again, as if tasting it. And I will keep choosing, she answered, and a knock came that wasn't the elevator, wasn't the door, wasn't sound at all but pressure like a fist on the bond itself. Davin stiffened. That's not Vargas. The penthouse dimmed by a breath as the sky pulled a cloud over its face. The hair on Celine's arms lifted. The air acquired a taste, iron, old stone, river water, midnight. Davin's eyes went all the way wolf. Stay behind me, he said, which was command and plea and reflex. No, Celine said calmly, which was answer and promise. She set 2 fingers to the mark. Let them see me. The pressure built until the windows sang. A voice poured through the glass without bothering to knock a second time. Little king, it said, amused and tired, like a teacher who had watched generations cheat the same way. Do you think crowning a girl on a hill makes her a Luna? Ancient ones, Davin said, and the words were a ritual even in his mouth. Celine felt the shape of the presence, the old council that lived in rumor and in the rooms no one rented because they'd never really been empty. It did not arrive in bodies, it arrived the way winter arrives in a town that pretended seasons were suggestions. What do they want? She whispered. What they always want, Davin said. Proof. Proof of what? That we won't break the world with what we are. Celine stepped forward until her palm lay against the glass where Davin's had been. The city's heat kissed her skin. The presence pressed. She pressed back. The bond did not bristle. It reached, curious, the way fire reaches for the hand that knows it can't afford to be afraid. She spoke to the glass, to the old air that had heard older arguments. If you want a test, bring it to us, she said. Bring it to me. Silence gathered itself to a point. Then, tonight. Moonrise. Union Station. If the girl breaks, the city goes back to the story it knows. If she does not, perhaps we learn a new chapter. The presence thinned. The penthouse exhaled. Davin didn't. His shoulders were stone. You can say no, he said. I won't, she said. He turned to her then, something raw in the gold. If you fall, I fall with you. Then we don't fall, she said, and smiled in a way that made him forget to be careful with his face. We make them kneel. Los Angeles gathers where trains learn their manners. Union Station's Grand Hall held 100 ghosts and twice as many goodbyes. Its chandeliers remembered the dust of decades, its marble remembered what feet had asked of it. Tonight, it remembered wolves. The moon found a hole in the clouds and poured itself through. A coin fit into a slot that always gave the same prize. The concourse emptied of humans with soft eyes and late tickets. Security decided their radios were very interesting down the hall. A circle formed where commuters usually forgot they were people. Davin stood at Celine's right. Zora slid in at her left with a grin like a knife she'd fallen in love with. Vargas watched from a balcony because balconies were invented for men who wanted to pretend they weren't sociable. The air cooled. The chandeliers shivered. The old council did not arrive. They revealed that they had been here before anyone. The shadows opposite Celine deepened, collecting until they were not shadow anymore but presence, and then, displeased with metaphor, 3 figures resolved in the space where light had declined to work. Not bodies exactly, but near enough for mouths and eyes and the weight of wanting. Little King, the first said, ignoring Davin to look at Celine. Its voice carried dust and rain and the memory of a forest where the trees told stories about the wolves and not the other way around. Girl. She inclined her head, neither bow nor challenge. Celine. You were nobody, the second said. Now you are invention. Now I am choice, she replied. The third's attention slid to Davin and back. And you would anchor the city with a thread that burns. Celine stepped forward. I am not a thread, and I am not a hole, she said, steady. I am bridge, and I am fire if someone doesn't learn where to put their hands. A whisper, surprise, perhaps, or a smile with its voice turned down. The first lifted an arm, the air thickened. Prove your bond is more than hunger. Prove your city is more than a place to hide from the moon. Davin's hand brushed her spine. Not a push. Not a restraint. A presence that said here where you can reach me. How? Celine asked. A door opened at the hall's far end with a sound like history being careful not to wake the baby. Wolves filed in, some with faces she recognized from the terraces and alleys, some she did not. Humans who were not quite human straightened their coats and blinked the city's grit out of their eyes. Among them, like a silver fish in a dark river, slipped a girl no older than 18 wearing a flannel shirt and a look that said she'd spent a month learning how to disappear and never wanted to use the skill again. She ran, Zora murmured. Smells like East County. Smells like fear. Alpha's daughter, Vargas breathed, too delighted. Delicious. The council's gaze did not move from Celine. Make the circle safe, it said. Make the wolves safe. Make the girl safe. Do it without becoming a blade. The ask was impossible. It was perfect. Celine's heart didn't race. It set its feet. Davin. I'm here. Give me your strength, she said. Not your shadow. The bond flared, not like chains, not like permission, like a current offered to a wire. Celine lifted her hand. The mark glowed, and the glow rippled out, a pale wash that barely touched the floor and yet moved wolves to set their boots softer. She breathed in, the circle breathed with her. She exhaled, something old exhaled back. She walked to the girl. The crowd opened in the way water opens, with grudging grace and an admission that ships exist. Up close, the girl trembled the way buildings tremble in wind, visibly, honestly. Her eyes were coyote bright with sleeplessness. Bruises bloomed like bad flowers on her forearms. Celine lowered to a knee. What's your name? The girl's throat worked. Katie, she whispered, and the name was so painfully normal that Celine wanted to put her coat around it and tell it not to apologize for being soft in a hard room. Hi, Katie, Celine said, as if they were in line at the bus, as if there weren't gods eating popcorn in the eaves. Do you want to be here? A tiny shake of the head. Do you want to go home? Another shake. The flannel trembled. Hill, she bit the rest. Celine set 2 fingers on the mark at her own throat. It warmed, waiting. She looked up, not at the council, not at Davin, not at Vargas. At the circle. At the wolves who had decided to come see whether stories could change. This city belongs to those who choose it, she said, voice clear enough to make chandeliers think about singing. If you call it home, it will answer. If you run from harm, the harm will not be invited to catch you. She rose. Pack law here, no hunt without consent. No claim without answer. No girl goes where she does not say yes. It wasn't ritual. It wasn't law. It was instruction written on the air and offered to every throat. The pressure in the room shifted. It didn't lessen. It redistributed. Zora's grin showed teeth like ideology. Davin's presence behind Celine widened until the hall belonged to it. A man shouldered forward, beard like a manifesto, eyes like a closed door. She is my blood, he snarled. Your new Luna plays human games. Wolves take what they can hold. Davin moved past Celine in a single step that relocated the horizon. Argue with me, he invited, voice very soft. The man looked into gold and did not. Smart. Celine reached out to Katie. Do you want a pack? A heartbeat. 2. Then a breath that tasted like a beginning. Yes. Then you're ours, Celine said. She turned, hand extended toward the circle. Who will witness? I will, Zora said first, stepping in with the ease of someone who'd been waiting a long time to say it. Downtown stands. A low rumble as others answered, Little Tokyo, Glassel, El Sereno, Echo Park, names that sounded like music when wolves said them right. The council listened. It did not intervene. It wanted to see if gravity worked the same in this room as the last time it checked. The bond poured through Celine's bones and made scaffolding where once there had been apology. She felt Davin's strength hum at the edge, offered, not imposed. She took enough to hold the circle, she left enough that he remained himself. It felt less like using him and more like they had put their hands on the same rope and agreed to pull. Katie stepped into the space Celine had made. The hall held its breath. The chandeliers tried not to cry. Celine placed 2 fingers lightly at the base of Katie's neck, not to mark, not to command, to bless. Welcome home, she said. The pressure that had been a test shifted to something like approval. Not a cheer. A nod. The old council's edges softened, it remembered being new at something once and decided not to be cruel to the sight. Proof, the first said simply. The second looked amused. A king who does not devour. A Luna who does not demand. The third tilted its head toward the ceiling, toward a moon that had finally found a hole in the cloud big enough to admit a face. Perhaps the city will not break. Davin's hand found Celine's, fingers fitting without conversation. He looked to the council. We will always be asked to prove it, he said. We will always answer. And if you fail, ask dust and rain. Then we fall together, he said. Celine squeezed his hand. And we rise the same way. Vargas clapped again, soft and sincere this time. Well, he said to no one in particular, how boring for me. Bored men cause the most trouble, Zora said cheerfully. I'll keep him entertained. The council thinned, leaving a taste of iron and old, good wood. The circle exhaled. The city outside resumed its late trains and its early regrets. Katie looked around as if trying on a future. Celine bent and wrapped her in a hug the way you wrap bandages, firmly, kindly, with the knowledge that most healing is slow and unphotogenic. When she straightened, Davin was watching her the way predators watch sunrises, suspicious of beauty and grateful for it anyway. You changed the law, he said. No, Celine said. I said it out loud. He stepped close, the bond warming as if happy to be useful and quiet at the same time. Luna, he murmured, in a voice that turned the marble intimate. It wasn't a title tonight, it was a name you say when you hand someone both your throat and your crown. She put her palm to his chest. The heartbeat there didn't need to be counted to be believed. King. They kissed in the hall where arrivals and departures are recorded by ghosts with exquisite handwriting. It wasn't a claiming and it wasn't a test. It was a seal, wax pressed with a signet the city could feel under its streets. When they parted, the wolves had already begun to make themselves useful. Someone had found blankets, someone coffee, someone a bureaucrat who would file things under words humans read as charity and wolves read as clan. Zora sauntered by, bumping Celine's shoulder. Tomorrow, she said, knife class. Flyers, Celine promised. Vargas lifted 2 fingers in a salute that could be threat or blessing, which is to say, Los Angeles. Do marry, he called, because men like him always like to pretend the last word is theirs. It produces such lovely parties. Go home, Davin said without looking at him. Vargas laughed and went. The moon took the skylight for itself a final time and left. The chandeliers settled like birds on a wire, turning their faces to morning. Celine stood with Davin in the middle of a circle that had learned a new shape and knew it would have to practice it. Does this end? She asked, not because she wanted it to, but because stories had taught her endings were a kindness. He looked at her as if endings were the only thing he'd ever learned to distrust. No, he said. We just stopped telling this part out loud. Then tell me the next part in the car, she said. I want tacos. He smiled, and it was the first time she'd seen it without armor. Luna's command, he said. They walked out under the high arches, past the benches where 100 goodbyes had taken off their shoes and wept, into a night that had decided to be gentle. The city breathed them in. The bond hummed, not a leash, not a door. A bridge. A promise. And Los Angeles, which had always been very good at pretending not to care, looked up at its moon, looked down at its wolves, and thought, privately. This might actually work.